Assalamu alaikum rahmatullah. How are you, grade 9? How are you today, girls? Today, inshallah, we will take the ways of protection from radiation. We have 4 ways or 4 methods to protect ourselves from radiation. Number 1, we will talk about people who work with radioactive elements in labs and hospitals. They should wear protective gloves and clothes from radiation. Number 2, the countries that have nuclear reactors should set special laws. Why? To force people to cool the hot water down before pouring it into seas and lakes. You know, nuclear reactors. Nuclear reactors, they use very hot water, so they should cool hot water down before pouring it into seas and lakes. So the countries should set special laws to oblige means what? To force the people who work in the nuclear reactor to cool down the hot water before pouring it into seas and lakes. Number 3, getting rid of or remove of nuclear wastes according to the strength of radiation. Radiations may be weak or intermediate or strong, so getting rid of the nuclear wastes depend on the strength of this radiation. So we have here A and B. A, the nuclear wastes that emit weak or intermediate radiations, intensity. These wastes should be buried underground after being surrounded by a layer of cement or rocks. So, the nuclear wastes that emit, that produce weak or intermediate radiation should be surrounded by a layer of cement or rocks before burying underground. And the nuclear wastes that emit strong radiation should be buried deeply underground. Number 4, the following conditions should be considered on burying the radioactive wastes. Now we know that radioactive wastes that emit or produce weak or intermediate or strong radiation, how can we bury them? Number 4 here, the conditions that should be considered on burying the radioactive wastes. These radioactive wastes should be buried remotely, like remote control remotely, away from streams of underground water. Why? To prevent polluted of the underground water. So number 1, these radioactive wastes should be buried remotely away from streams of underground water. Why? To avoid pollution of the underground water. Number B, the region chosen to store, the region that we bury the radioactive wastes in, it should be stable. What is the meaning of stable? Not exposed to earthquakes or volcanoes, away from the regions, the areas or places that have earthquakes or volcanoes or shaking of the earth. So we have four ways or 4 methods of protection from radiation. Number 1, people who work with radioactive elements should wear protective gloves and clothes. Number 2, the countries who have nuclear reactors should set special laws to force the people to cool the water down before pouring it into seas and lakes. Number 3, getting rid of nuclear wastes according to the strength. The weak and intermediate radiation should be buried, but before this, surrounded by a layer of cement or rocks. And the strong radiation, radioactive elements should be deeply buried underground. And the condition that we should do it on burying the radioactive wastes remotely away from streams of underground water to avoid the pollution of underground water. And number 2, choose the place or the area that we will bury the radioactive elements in it. This area should be stable, not exposed to earthquakes or volcanoes. The last point today, we will talk about the safe dose or the safe amount when exposed to nuclear radiation. In general, we shouldn't be exposed to nuclear radiation, but if there is anyone work with these things, with these radioactive elements, what is the safe dose for this? human every day. The limit of the safe dose or the safe amount of radiation for those people who work in radiation field shouldn't exceed 20 millisievert per year. This means that the people who work in radiation field shouldn't exceed or shouldn't have exposed to more than 20 millisievert per year. What is the meaning of sievert? Sievert, it is the international unit that used to measure what you girls, to measure the radiation absorbed by the human body. Like when you measure length, you use meter. When you measure mass, you use kilogram, for example. So here, when you measure the radiation absorbed by the human body, we will use the unit. It's called what? Sievert. So people who work in this field shouldn't exceed 20 millisievert per year. But the safe dose of radiation for public, for any human not working in this radiation field, shouldn't exceed 1 millisievert per year. And you know sievert now, it is the international unit of measuring the radiation absorbed by the human body. 1 millisievert equal what? 10 power minus 3 sievert. Like 1 millimeter equal 10 power minus 3 meter. The same thing here. The effective safe dose of radiation differs according to 3 factors. Effective safe amount, dose of radiation differs according to 3 factors. Number 1, the person's age. Number 2, the interval or the time or the duration of time of being exposed to the radiation. And number 3, the body tissue exposed to the radiation, the type of body tissue that exposed to radiation. So we have 3 factors that the effective safe dose of radiation depend on them: the person's age, the interval or the duration of being exposed to radiation, and the body tissue exposed to this radiation. Now we finished, alhamdulillah, unit 2, lesson 3. We will start inshallah in unit 3 tomorrow. If you can't understand any point, please send me a message. Thank you, grade 9.